The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, everybody. This is Monica Main, and welcome to the 6-week mentorship group for Flip It Profit. So what I'm going to do in the very beginning is tell you a little bit about how this mentorship group works, how to navigate through this next 6 weeks, and what to expect from this very powerful, extremely rare mentorship group that I'm doing probably for the first time ever and quite possibly maybe for the last time. So congratulations for getting in on this. And I do apologize for this being early today, but it's because I have to catch a flight to do my retreat this coming weekend in Monterey, California. So I have to do this one early. Please note that all of the sessions here on out will be later on in the afternoon. It's actually going to be noon Pacific time from this point forward, starting next Thursday. And so again, don't worry about not showing up to the live sessions because you don't have to show up to the live sessions. You can actually watch the replay, which will be available to you the moment I'm able to render the video and upload it into the system, which generally takes about 1 to 2 hours. So let me tell you a little bit about what to expect, how my mentorships work. Typically when I start a mentorship group, I just automatically assume that everybody knows what's going on and how these work. And I figured, well, this time maybe I should just do a little bit of a crash course for everybody just so that you know what to expect, what I expect of you, and mostly what you should expect from yourself. So here's how my mentorship groups work. We're going to meet on the same day each week unless I specify otherwise. Sometimes I have a last minute business trip that comes up, or sometimes I have some kind of important meeting that I have to do and I will alter the date or the time ever so slightly. Usually it's within 24 hours from the original time and date that we expect. Again, this Thursday that we're doing it, we're starting today, we're actually unusually early. It's typically going to start at noon Pacific time every Thursday. So starting next Thursday, it's going to be at noon Pacific time. And you'll receive notifications in the system when it's time for the webinar to start. And so every training is typically 60 to 90 minutes. Today it will be 60 minutes because I'm just doing an overview and I do have a flight to catch. And then starting next week, they're probably going to go longer. Some of my trainings go really long, like up to 2 hours, but I typically like to keep it 90 minutes and under. And so again, you do not have to be present for the live trainings because they are all recorded. And it typically takes me 1 to 2 hours to get it up into the members only page, which I'm going to talk about in a second. So that you can replay it, or if you missed a part of it and you didn't get to the session on time and you want to replay it, or you missed something in the presentation while you're watching it, you can always replay it as many times as you want. You're going to have access to a members only page. Everybody who is part of this mentorship program is already on the members only page. You guys are already in the system. So all you need to do is go to the members only page, which is monicamain.com/Flip It Profit Mentorship. I misspelled that. It's Flip It Profit Mentorship 2019, and use your email address as your username, and your password is going to be defaulted at Success 101. That's upper lowercase sensitive. Success is usually uppercase and the rest is lowercase. However, if you've ever taken a mentorship group from me before, you might have changed your password, and if it's not working when you put your email into the system, just simply go into the forgot password link, which is right below where the password box is. It's a very small link. It's easy to miss. But if you're not sure what your password is, or if the password Success 101 is not working, then simply put in your email and then click the forgot password link right under the input box for the password. And then that way it'll just reset it. It'll just send you reset instructions into your email address. If you're still unable to get in, then just call my staff. Or email me at mm@monicamain.com, and I will get you into the system, or in the very least give you a default. I actually do have a default username and password for people to get in until we square away their email addresses, because sometimes the system just simply does not like certain email addresses for some reason. And so sometimes we have to ask you to just get a different email address just for the purposes of the group. It's not like you're going to be sent any emails or anything on that email. It's just for you to be able to enter into the system. So again, it's monicamain.com/Flip It Profit Mentorship 2019. Please note I did misspell that there. Mentorship is not IOP. It's just mentorship, like a ship that you take a cruise on, and it's 2018, all run together. It doesn't matter if that part is upper lowercase. and that will allow you to get into the members only page, and that is the page that you will have access to for the duration of this group. In addition to that, you will have access to it for a couple of months thereafter, after the group ends. In the event that you want to go through the modules again over and over again, you can do that for about 2 months after the mentorship group ends. You'll still have access to the members only page for that entire time, for all of the training materials, videos, PowerPoint presentations, and the action sheets will still be there for about 2 months after the group ends. So after each week's training, typically it takes 1 to 2 hours for the video, action sheet, and PDF of the PowerPoint presentation to be uploaded to your members only page. So wait about a couple hours after the presentation to be sure that all of the stuff is up there. And then you could check the members only page to watch the video if you missed it, or if you need a replay of the video. You could download the action sheet, and then you could also download the PDF of the PowerPoint presentation. Also, too, if there's any applicable materials that you need for the group, any forms or sheets or anything else that you need, I will also make those available on the members only page. And so you're required to fulfill all of the things listed on the action sheet, except for the portion that says you could skip ahead a week or two. There'll be optional things that you can do if you find that you're whizzing through a lot of the stuff and you want to get a head start on the next week or 2 weeks ahead. I will allow you to skip ahead. There'll be a little section there. So you are required to do everything except that section on your action sheet before the next webinar, which will be a week from today. So everything needs to be done on that sheet by a week from today. So most of my groups are 8 weeks. This is a condensed 6-week class. However, if I find that we need extra time, meaning that I feel that the group is slow, you guys need more time getting it, or I want to introduce some additional bonus materials, I may add an additional 1 or 2 weeks, which will not cost you anything extra. It'll be part of the group. If I decide to add an additional 1 or 2 weeks, you will be notified. And typically what I'll do is in the webinar system, I will just simply add the weeks and you'll just be notified that there's additional weeks. Furthermore, I will go ahead and send you an email letting you know that we're adding a week or two to the curriculum, which would be beneficial for you if you want to learn more and do more things. So I'll just decide as we go along, because every group has a different personality. You know, this is why I can only, whenever people wonder like how much prep work I do when I do my retreats, when I do my seminars and any workshop groups, and I actually typically only prepare day one on all of my groups, my workshops, things like that, because I have to get a feel for the group. Every group is different. It's almost as if you're dealing with a different person or personality, except the entire personality is the entire group. And so I have to get a feel for what the group is like, what the group is about. So I have the whole curriculum for this group laid out. I have the whole curriculum for my Inner Success Retreat coming up. I have the whole curriculum laid out for any group or workshop or seminar I do, but I typically only prepare for the first day with fine-tuned minute detail, and then the remaining amount of time actually has to be kind of pieced together from a multitude of different presentations that I've already done to prepare for it, just to kind of tweak it a little bit based on the personality of my group. So this group will be no different than any other, and that's why I have so many students that keep doing my mentorship groups over and over again with different topics and subject matters, is because I make sure that everybody gets what they need when they come here. That's my job. And the only way I can do that job adequately and correctly is by getting a feel for the group and who you are and what your needs are and how the pacing of the group is, to be able to ultimately give you the very best education possible. So I think that's why it's different than any other education you'll ever find out there, is because I do make it a very tailor-made, custom group for each set of people that come through. So I never do a cookie cutter, presentation for everyone all the time, because I want to make sure that the entire group is catching on and getting everything I'm talking about. So in this particular segment that I'm going to be talking to you through today is going to be an overview, a general overview of what to expect in this group. And then starting next week, we're really going to get into the minute details, probably ideally starting with the finder's fee portion of it, becoming a professional property finder. Okay? So let's get started. Take a deep breath. Please note that this is not difficult at all. This is going to be relatively easy for you as long as you follow suit with everything I tell you. The cool thing about me being a trainer in wealth building strategies for so many years is that I've gotten so good at being able to offer my students the nuts and bolts training, if you will, the A to Z that you need to be able to make this work in the most comprehensible and easy to do fashion. And I pride myself on that. And it didn't happen overnight. It took many, many years of me training people and understanding people's nuances and personalities to be able to finally understand how to train people in the way that they could best and most adequately pick up the information that they need. And so with this is not going to be any different than any other group that I ever do, any other training I ever do, where I will give you the nuts and bolts of exactly what you need to know to get started. Okay, so welcome to Flip It Profit Real Estate Investing. And, as you know, my name is Monica Main, and I'm going to be your guide for these 6 weeks of modules. And what I'm here to do is make this a step-by-step strategy for you to completely understand how to work 2 different main strategies that we're going to be talking about. What I'm going to be talking about in this session, though, is solely the overview of what I want to see every single person who comes into this and understands, the trainings that we do and wants to do this with all their heart and soul. Again, I don't really want anybody, I talk about this in other events that I do. I don't want anybody to be doing anything that they don't like or that they're not passionate about. So if this is something that you're really not interested in, which you'll probably know after this session, if this is something you want to do, then I really would suggest that you find something else to do with your life, because life is too short to be doing things that you don't want to do for money. I always kind of kid people every once in a while and say, if it's all about money, then you could stand at a street corner and be a prostitute. And I'm assuming that there's certain reasons that you wouldn't want to do that, and there's probably certain reasons that you wouldn't want to do a variety of other things for money, if it's just about the money. So after this session, you'll be able to really kind of take a look and analyze how you feel about this whole process, because I will be giving you 2 main strategies in which the Flip It Profit system works. And then you could decide which strategy you want to use first, or if this is even your cup of tea to begin with. So that's the main crux of what I'm going to be focusing in on today, is the overview of everything that I'm going to be going over for the next several sessions. And then you could decide how you want to take your course of action. So this is going to be a complete overview of how the Flip It Profit system works. I've never actually done this kind of training before. I started out as a flipper back in 1995, which I'll go through a little bit later, but I've never actually offered this complete comprehensive training before. So you're really in for a treat. Now, please note that you do have 2 options. You can become a professional finder and get referral fees or finder's fees for deals that you find for either us as part of our investor group or the investor network that I work with, or you could actually find your own investors to work with if you'd like, which I will teach you how to do a little later in these segments. Or you can buy, rehab, and resell properties. Now, what's unique about the system that I have is that unlike all the other flipper systems that you'll find on late night infomercials and in courses and systems that you've probably come across over the years about real estate flipping, the reason my stuff is different is that you can actually do 2 different types of flipping. You can do SFRs, which stands for single family residences, which typically are your houses, your condos, and your townhomes, whatever can fit a single family in it. But also too, you can flip small apartment buildings. You could also flip residential multifamily properties like duplexes, triplexes, or quads, which are also called fourplexes. So that's why I'm different, and what I teach is because when you start getting into those types of properties, because you're selling them to investors who are looking for turnkey investments, they're willing to pay top dollar for those types of properties, unlike the single family home who's going to be sold to an end user, who's going to move his family in. He's going to pay whatever market is at that time. However, when you're flipping other types of properties like a duplex, triplex, quad, or a 5-unit apartment building or a 12-unit apartment building, you're ultimately going to be buying it, rehabbing it, and leasing it up, then reselling the property as a turnkey investment to an investor who wants to pay top dollar for it. So I'll be talking about both. So if you want to just stick with houses, you can. If you want to go into multifamily, which is your 2, 3, and 4 units, you can. You can go into residential commercial, which is your apartment buildings of 5 units and more, which falls under the commercial classification and category. You can make choices that other people will never share with you because a lot of people just don't know how to do this. And that's why I make as much money as I do in this business, is because I work the niche markets. I work in niche fields where I can capitalize and make big money doing things that other people don't teach, other people don't know about. And there's certainly not a lot of people that are flooding the market doing this because they're mostly concentrating on flipping houses. And so again, I'm not telling you can't flip houses. In fact, what I'm going to share with you about houses is actually quite extraordinary and actually kind of exciting if you're one of these people that has been following me for a while and you're not really interested in apartment building real estate or any of those other things. I have something about single family homes that will actually get you quite excited. But to start off with this whole process, you may just want to start off as a property finder or as a bird dog, is what I call it. You could call yourself a property finder. You can call yourself a professional finder, a bird dog. You can call yourself, anything you really want to call yourself, a property scout. Those are the terms that are generally used for this. And essentially what you do is you find an investor to work with. Now, please note that because you're part of this, you can work with both my own real estate investment group as well as the investor network that I work with. But you could also find your own investors to work with, which I'll teach you how to do a little later on. Then you find properties that ultimately fit what these investors are looking for, and then you get paid finder's fees. They're also called referral fees as well. So that's generally the gist of it. You don't even have to get your hands dirty with flipping anything. You don't have to deal with that headache if that's not what you want to do. This is the most basic version of doing this. But as I mentioned before, we're not just going to focus on single family residences, your houses, your condos, and your townhomes. I want to see you guys and gals focus on the bigger stuff, the duplexes, triplexes, and quads. And your fiveplexes, which are your apartment buildings of, a 5, 6, 7, 8-plex. You could focus on a 12-plex if you want. That falls under the commercial category, because your end user, which means your end buyer, the person who's going to be buying the property from you or giving you a finder's fee, is going to give you bigger money because you're working with investors who are looking for investment properties versus just dealing with an end user that is a, paycheck Charlie looking for a house for his family to move into. Big difference as far as the end user goes. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about that, the overview of that today as we go along here. So you're going to make the most money with flipping. I'm not going to lie. This is part 2. So if you don't want to be a finder, or if you think, well, what is flipping about? Maybe I can make a decision about whether I want to do flipping or not based on what Monica tells me in this session. And so I'm also going to tell you about flipping and how that works as well. So this is a mentorship group that's talking about 2 different things, but today we're talking only about the overview of everything that I want to see you fully understand to make the best possible decision in which route you want to take, because you will have to make that decision before you watch the next segment. And so you're going to either decide, am I starting off as a professional finder and getting finder's fees, or am I going to start off as a real estate flipper? I need to make that choice, is what you're going to have to tell yourself. And which choice am I going to make is the question you're going to ask yourself after you watch this session. So today we're talking about just the overview, just to get you to make a decision so we can put you on the right track. So what I want to talk about is a rather cutting edge real estate strategy. So back when I got started in 1995, I got started as a real estate flipper. My first property purchase was a 1-bedroom, 1-bath townhouse. And I bought it for $55,555. And the story behind that is because I was working with a really good kick-ass listing agent. And he told me it was an auction property. And he told me, if you want to win an auction, you can't use round numbers and you can't use zeros, because everybody will bid a zero. So for example, he'll say people will bid 50,000 or 55,000 even, or they might bid 55,500. So he says in some of them that are a little bit more clever will bid 55,550, but they usually put a zero on it. He says, so if you make it an uneven number like this, to just cut it right above what typically people will evenly bid up on a property, you'll win it. And so that's what I did. I followed his direct orders about exactly how I should bid on this property, and I got it. In fact, I got it. The person behind me, I think, bid 55,000, I believe, and so I won it by $555. And so after a short time, I was able to resell it for just under 80,000. And I repeated the process with another townhome, buying it for 64,000, selling it for over 90, just about 90 days later. And from that point forward, I was really hooked on flipping real estate. I believe most serious real estate investors start off their real estate investing careers in this way. And so I was really naive because at that time I didn't understand how to leverage those profits. I was just using it as income, and I had no idea what passive income real estate was. I had no idea what a 1031 exchange was. And I had a painful experience with the government, with the IRS, with capital gains taxes. And this is where I learned a huge lesson, which is something I want to pass forward to you, because I think one of the most valuable things that you can get out of learning how to do something so profitable from somebody who's done this for more than 20 years is that you can actually avoid the pitfalls that I had in this business. And my biggest pitfall was that I didn't understand what a 1031 exchange was. And if you don't know what that is, very briefly, what a 1031 exchange is, it's basically you being able to sell a property and then buy a property of equal or greater value within 6 months, and you can roll those profits into the next property and defer your taxes. And so I didn't also understand what passive income was. I learned from a guy named Dr. Raj back in 2001. I was trying to start a brand new diet supplement company, and he had a weight loss shake that I was really interested in that was all natural. And I remember going to his office in Tustin, California, and I went down there, and I think we talked about the weight loss shake for 5 minutes, maybe tops. And when I sat down in his office, I felt like he was a kindred spirit, and I knew him forever. He was a really sweet Indian guy, and he started talking about real estate. He's just all excited about apartment building real estate. And I looked at him, I'm like, I do a lot of real estate flipping. I flip houses. He's like, no, you're wasting your time. The money's in real estate and passive income real estate with apartment buildings. And I'm looking at him like you would have thought that somebody was telling me something completely foreign, as if I never heard it before in my life. Now, obviously, I knew what an apartment was, an apartment building, but never before did I ever consider buying a multi-million-dollar apartment building. I was thinking, well, the down payment must be really, really extreme. Like, on a $3 or $4 million building, I mean, what are we talking as far as a down payment? Some heavy-duty figures. And I didn't think that was a doable thing for me. And so I just never considered it. So we talked about 2 to 3 hours just about apartment building real estate. And so that's when I first learned how the whole process of apartment building real estate worked. And then a light bulb went off in my head. I'm like, I could just start flipping some of these properties, but flip some of them into passive income real estate and ultimately defer my taxes through the 1031 exchange. Now, please note that the 1031 exchange and all these IRS rules and regulations change constantly. So, what's true today may not be true tomorrow. And so please note that you always have to double check on how all these things work and what the time frames are as far as, turning the money into a buy and hold asset using the 1031 exchange. So please note that, you can usually utilize the expertise of a really good real estate broker or a listing agent or even an attorney that can help you with this. So I'm not here to give you legal advice, but I'm saying that this is something that I wish I would have known way back then. So I started to plan a business around real estate investing because I was just flipping endlessly. In fact, when the economy changes, flipping will be in, then it goes out. And then you're kind of stuck there because you're standing there and you're unable to flip anymore for a while when the economy takes a turn. And it's very inconsistent. It's very profitable, but very inconsistent. But what's consistent is having tenants in your units paying rent every single month, and it comes to you as passive income every single month. So just like any other treadmill that you'll find in any career or in any job, it starts off exciting and then eventually it gets boring and tiring and sometimes frustrating where you want to pull your hair out. And in my case, very painful with the capital gains taxes. And so I was just really getting sick of just the treadmill of flipping. And so I started thinking about the apartment building thing and how I can get involved in that. And so that's when my entire life changed with regard to real estate, is making that mental conversion from, I got to be a flipper, this is the way to make money in real estate, to this is not really a good way to make money in real estate long term, and I have to have a different business strategy set up around making money in real estate. And that's when everything changed for me. And I only wish, by the way, I had somebody like you have right now sharing these details with you, because I had no one. I bumbled through this entire system, this entire business, making mistake after mistake after mistake, knowing nothing, having no help, having nobody guide me at all. And so everything that you're learning now is something that could really take a lot of years, decades perhaps, out of the painful learning curve process that I had to go through when I first got started in this business. So even though we're starting off as property flippers, or we're starting off as finders for properties for investors, however you decide to start off with on that scale, please note that there's a bigger picture in this. And that's why I'm going through this bigger picture overview with you as the first segment here, because I want you to understand what the power of leverage is, that you're not going to be flipping forever, because that is not the end all be all plan. That needs not be the end all be all plan, because that's kind of a fool's plan, as I could tell you from personal experience. Only a fool will think that flipping is the plan. That's not the plan. That's just it's kind of a stepping stone to a bigger picture. And so what you need to start thinking about is the bigger plan. Don't be short-sighted. Don't be thinking, oh, I'm just going to make a few bucks here and there flipping deals. It's like, well, have a bigger plan, because we need a bigger wealth building plan. I think the biggest problem with most people in this country is that they're very short-sighted. They don't have a financial plan that extends, 10, 15, 20 years like many Asian cultures do. But also, too, they wonder, how can I possibly set up a long-term lifetime of financial freedom by doing something that can't possibly offer that? Flipping cannot really offer that for you. And I'm here to tell you, it's really good money on the short run, but eventually you're going to get sick of it, and eventually you're not going to want to pay the capital gains taxes, and eventually you're going to want to retire and do the things that you really want to do. Walk on the beach all day, go to watercolor class, go to yoga class every day. You're going to want to do something different to change it up. I'm going to be 45 this year, and I'm starting to realize that even though I have a ton of energy for my age, I'm starting to feel it. I'm starting to feel the creaks in my bones. I had rolled one of my ankles in an exercise program a few years back, and I'm starting to actually feel the pain of that rolled ankle that's just kind of mildly swelling every time I wake up in the morning. And I'm starting to actually feel the physical effects of aging. And I'm also starting to realize that the types of business activities I've been doing isn't really fulfilling like it used to be. And how awesome is it that I could always remind myself that since I was smart enough at some point to set up a lifetime of financial freedom, at any point in time I can walk away from all of this. The reason I keep training you guys and gals is because I like it so much. And every time I decide to go into either semi-retirement or retirement from training every so often, which I do every here and there, I always come back to it, because I find such pleasure in helping you guys and gals see the way in building your own financial freedom, your own real estate fortress, if you will. And so that's why I keep coming back after I go into these bouts of semi-retirement, because I really do enjoy what I do, but knowing that I don't have to do it. I could stop at any point in time. And when my body does give out, or I decide that I want to do something else, or I want to take a year off, I have that option because of how I was able to set myself up with passive income strategies that I've been able to implement. And if I did not meet Dr. Raj that one day back in 2001, I often wonder where my life would have been at this point in time. And so I'm so glad that you're able to come into this now and you've met me, because I'm here to kind of pass on what Dr. Raj passed on to me back then, and open your eyes about the possibilities of ultimately how to create this long-term financial freedom, because eventually you are going to get sick of being a finder, and eventually you are going to get sick of flipping real estate if that's the route you take. And I'm here to tell you that there is a bigger scope plan that we need to be focusing in on from the very start. From the very start, I want to show you how this works. So I have an every other secret. And if you're going to start off as a house flipper, then you'll be able to make bigger chunks of money than being a finder. Although the cool thing about being a finder is that you can work on multitudes of properties at once. Like, for example, you can work on 5, 6 deals at once and be getting finder's fees for 5, 6 deals at a time. When you're a property flipper, especially in the beginning, you're generally going to only do one deal at once, one at a time. And so that kind of, taps you out a little bit as far as time, effort, and energy when you're actually flipping houses. So there's good and bad on both sides, pros and cons. But if you are flipping properties, you can buy 1, 2, or even 3 houses to flip, and then ultimately at some point in the very early stages of this, use some of those proceeds to inject into, say, a single family resident by cashing it out 100%. So essentially what you're doing is taking the profits from 1 to 3 of your first flips and then turning around and buying a single family home without a mortgage, cash out. You're just basically going to lay cash on the table and cash it out, and you'll have no mortgage on the property. The reason I do this generally with single family homes is because when you're renting them out long-term to tenants, you get a lot more money when you actually rent out single family homes versus an apartment building. Furthermore, you're going to have less of an expense ratio on a single family home than you are apartment buildings, which I'll explain a little bit later. And so if you can get a bunch of single family homes, these can be condos, these can be townhomes, they don't just have to be houses, and you have them cashed out 100% with no mortgage, then in the event that there's something wrong with the tenant, he or she has to be evicted because they were unable to pay rent for one reason or another, you don't have to worry about how you're going to get that mortgage coming in, mortgage paid, because you have no rent coming in. And so that's why I use this different strategy. I leverage apartment buildings, by the way, way different. I don't cash out apartment buildings unless there's a damn good reason as to why I need to. Like, for example, I'm getting a really good deal, or it's a 25% occupied property and it's a foreclosure and I have to cash out or whatever. Otherwise, I'm leveraging my properties a little differently. When it comes to apartment buildings, I'm actually getting mortgages on those. And that's because I have several tenants that are helping me pay the mortgage. So if any one of those tenants loses his job and can't pay the rent on time, then I have, say, 14 or 15 other tenants that are helping me help with the mortgage payment. So that's a little bit different of a story. But when you have a single family home and if you're mortgaging it with the purpose of turning around and renting it out, there's way too much risk in that. And that's why I strongly suggest using this strategy: flip, or get a bunch of finder's fees and inject that cash into 100% cash out on a single family property and then rent that out. And so you're probably thinking, well, damn, that's going to be a lot of houses. Well, I'm going to do a comparison that's going to probably kind of shock you. Now, the average rent in some of your really small to medium Midwest towns for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, now this is going to vary, so this is not really an average, but this is based on some of the research I've done, is about $1,000 a month. Now, even in the outskirt areas of Detroit, like I did a lot of work in the western suburbs of Detroit, like Garden City, Livonia, Redford, places like that, where you're able to actually get around 1,800, 2,000 a month for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath in the greater Detroit area of all places. Now, not in Detroit, obviously, but in the greater, suburbs, the western suburbs of Detroit. So this is actually low considering, what a depressed city Detroit is or was, depending on who you talk to, whether it's depressed now or not. But your gross operating expenses on your average single family residence is 20%. These are the operating expenses to operate the property, to operate the asset. Most of the time when you're dealing with a small apartment building, you're looking at between 35 and 45% in operating expenses. And on a larger apartment building, you're looking at 55 to 65%, sometimes higher, in gross operating expenses that come off your gross operating income. And that's a huge, huge percentage. I would rather have a ton of single family residences in really small apartment buildings that have a really low operating expense ratio than having 2 or 3 large apartment buildings where I'm paying 65% in expenses out on the gross operating income, because that's ridiculous. So this means that you clear on average about $800 per month if your gross operating expenses on your single family house is 20%. Now, let me talk about your financial freedom point. Your financial freedom point, in a nutshell, means how much money do you have to have coming in every month? Say you slip into a coma and you need help paying your bills and you have all your bills on auto pay. How much money do you have to have coming into your bank account to be able to cover all of your bills and expenses right now. I'm not talking about the financial freedom point, a year from now or 2 years from now when you want to buy your Bentley and your mansion. I'm talking about what are your expenses every single month right now, today, that you have to cover to be comfortable. And I'm not talking about, cutting all your cable out and going to eat spam. I'm talking about comfortably live right now. What is your current financial freedom point? So for some, it might be 10,000 a month. For some, it's 8. Some is 5. I mean, it depends on, who you are and how much you spend. Mine, believe it or not, with as much money as I typically spend. Now, my comfortable financial freedom point is actually less than 9,000 a month. But I usually keep it at 10 because I like to shop. I don't like to shop as much as most people think I do. So it's 10,000 a month. So I question, because I live in $1 million house. I drive 2 luxury cars, and I live comfortably. I live really well, and my financial freedom point is about 10,000 a month. And 12 if I spend a lot of money in a certain month, but it's usually 10,000 a month. So I question somebody that says it's 15 or 20 or 30,000 a month. I actually had a guy in an Atlanta seminar years ago that told me that his financial freedom point is 50,000 a month. And I said, so you're telling me that you spend 50,000 a month right now? In the last several months, you've spent 50,000 a month to be able to sustain your current lifestyle. And he said, yeah, I have child support, blah, 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 all this stuff. It's like, no, I think he more so had like a coke habit or a drug habit and stuff some way, because I mean, no, there's no way that you have a $50,000 financial freedom point right now. You might in 3 years from now when you start living it up, but right now, what is your financial freedom point? Now, if you take a look at that, though, based on the very conservative figures I used for the Midwest house, you only need about 10 houses to reach a financial freedom point of $8,000, or 13 houses for $10,000 a month. That's very, very, very doable within a relatively short period of time. I mean, anywhere, if you're really hustling, about 18 months to 2 years. But if it's taking you longer, 3 to 5 years. But it's definitely doable within a short period of time, depending on how much you want to hustle this out. And by the way, your rents typically will double every 15 to 18 years in most areas of the country. And you don't even have a mortgage on these properties. So your rents are doubling every 15 to 18 years. There's no other retirement vehicle out there like this that could touch this except with real estate investing. In fact, I don't need to be the one to tell you that most millionaires and billionaires all retain wealth in real estate. In fact, many of them have actually attained a lot of their wealth in real estate. So this is not a get-rich-quick scheme. This is not some kind of, shim-shammy thing I'm trying to pass before you. This is a highly legitimate way of building long-term financial stability and wealth for yourself. I mean, every billionaire and millionaire I've ever met has tons of real estate. And there's a reason for that. It's because it makes a lot of money. And now you, the little guy, the average Joe Blow or the average Jane Doe, can now get involved in this business by starting off as a professional finder or as a property flipper without using any of your own money. So to get the houses to cover your current financial freedom point, whether it's 8 houses, 10 houses, or 13 houses, this can also, again, include condos, townhomes. You'll typically get less rent on these, but it's also less to operate these. But it also includes cashing out duplexes, triplexes, and quads, or your fourplexes as well. By the way, these properties, these multifamily properties that are 2, 3, and 4 units also fall under the residential loan category. They don't become a commercial loan until it's a 5 or more unit apartment building, just to let you know. And so as an investor, it's just kind of more costly to go into a duplex, triplex, or quad if you're trying to get a mortgage, because you're generally going to be expected to put 25% cash down on those properties. But if you've got a 5 unit or more, provided that it's performing at 85% or higher occupancy level, you can actually put 20% down on your apartment buildings that are performing, and including also other commercial assets. So, please note that there's a lot of money in multifamilies, but I like to see you keep it really small. So when you start getting involved in the multifamily business, you start with maybe a duplex, a triplex, a quad, and maybe your biggest unit will be an 8 unit or 12 unit in the beginning. Be small, stay small. This is how I was able to really capitalize on these opportunities, especially post 2008, 2009, when everything was a complete financial disaster for most people. Most of the people, my cohorts and respected associates that were all involved in commercial real estate, meaning office buildings and retail storefronts, they laughed at me for my investment strategy. First of all, none of them were really serious about apartment buildings. And then when they noticed that all of my portfolio was these really small apartment buildings, they laughed and laughed and laughed and thought it was a big joke and I was never a serious investor. Well, come 2009, 2010, most of them were completely bankrupt by then. This is when you had big box stores like Circuit City and Blockbuster and places like that were starting to go bankrupt. Levitt's Furniture, all these big box stores that were going bankrupt. The only ones that were really taking over those really big 200,000 square foot places that they had. And so they are not laughing anymore. In fact, most of them completely vanished and disappeared out of my life. And so you have to understand this is a very powerful strategy, not only today for you, but also throughout your entire investing career. You don't need anything more than this ever. You don't need to go with the big boys and start getting 100, 200 plus unit apartment buildings. You don't have to start getting, skyscrapers or large office buildings to be, a significant, relevant investor. Stick with these and stick with these for the rest of your life, and you'll be richer than you could ever possibly imagine if you just stick with this one strategy that I'm teaching you. So once you meet your financial freedom point with the amount of properties that you need to get that every single month in passive income cash flow, that's minus all your expenses, then you could start with your larger properties between 5 and 24 units. Right now, I just want to see you start with the duplexes, triplexes, quads, and the very largest, but mostly your single family residences at this point. So while you're building up your single family portfolio, if your personal credit sucks right now, you must start fixing it. And I'll get into that a little bit later on as we go along here. But let's get into this now. So the very first things that you need to focus in on is, since I just discussed with you the overall bigger picture, that you're not only just going to be either becoming a finder or flipping properties, but you're also overall, as the bigger picture gives you, you will be focusing also in on getting involved with buy and hold assets. So you're going to have to find an area in which to do your flip it profit deals, regardless of whether you're going to be a finder or you're going to actually flip the properties yourself. And then you ultimately have to also find an area to do buy and hold properties. And these might be very different. Like, for example, if I flipped property today, in fact, I do deals every so often here in California. I don't like doing them for a variety of reasons, but I would generally like to be local to the property when I'm flipping it. But then all of my assets would go someplace else. It would be either in Atlanta, Georgia, or Detroit, Michigan, which I'm going to talk about shortly. Let me do just a quick side-by-side comparison, because this is really exciting stuff. So in the same area, which is Garden City, Michigan, this is a real listing, at least it was a while back. So they had a 7-unit apartment building of 449,000 listed, but in the same area, you can get 7 single-family homes for only 175,000. Now, the 7-unit apartment building is always less desirable for tenants because tenants would rather have a house than an apartment, right? Especially since these units are only 1 bedroom, 1 bath. That's the unit mix, only 1 bedroom, 1 bath. That's it. I think there was maybe 1 2-bedroom in there. These single family homes, I think the lowest one was a 2-bedroom, but most of them were 3. But it's much more desirable for families, for tenants. You're going to get longer term tenants in a house versus the more transient population. You're going to get in like a studio or a 1-bedroom, 1-bath apartment unit. Now your average expenses on the 7-unit apartment building is about 45% because it's a really small apartment. Normally they're 55 or 65%. Your average expense ratio on the 7 homes across the board is 25%. And then your projected gross operating income, or the amount of rental receipts and other income you'll get from the 7-unit apartment buildings, is about $63,000 per year. But on the single family homes, it's over $96,000 a year in gross rental and other income receipts from these properties that you have. So as you can clearly see, not only are you getting the 7 single family homes for a much lower price collectively, and that, by the way, when I say total cost, that's not total cost per house, it's total cost for all 7 houses in that area, the same exact area as where the 7-unit apartment building is. So you can clearly see that if you do the comparison, many times you'll actually come out ahead when you get the single family homes versus getting the apartment building of the same amount of units, right? And so you're actually coming out ahead on the on the single family homes by over 72,000 a year in net operating income versus a paltry 34,000 a year, which is half of what you're getting for the single family home. So not only are you paying a lot more money for the apartment building, but you're also getting less than half of the net operating income that you'd be getting on the single family homes. And so, a lot of people don't show you these comparisons, but, this is one of the reasons why I absolutely love working with a lot of single family homes in a certain area, because even though it's more work to acquire them all, you're going to be making a lot more money in the interim. Okay. So if you got more single family homes to match the amount of money that the 7-unit apartment building would have cost, which I'll remind you is $449,000, you actually wouldn't have 7 homes anymore. You would now have 18 houses, and all of them will either be a 2 or 3 bedroom unit mix. And that beats the hell out of studios or 1 bedrooms any day of the week, which means that you can command higher dollar amounts from your tenants. You'll have longer term tenants that want to stay there. Nobody likes to move a house, but it's easy to move an apartment or a condo. So, this is the way to go. This is definitely a way of creating long-term financial freedom and success and wealth for yourself, simply because it's very doable to buy a bunch of houses, and it's definitely psychologically attainable for most people getting started in real estate. Listen, I've been training people for many, many years on investing in real estate, and I found that the biggest obstacle for most people is an internal obstacle. It's the obstacle where they feel like they can't do it, or, oh, an apartment building's way too big for me to manage, or I don't know, what am I going to do with all those tenants? But the second I tell somebody, well, why don't you get started with one house, all of a sudden it becomes very doable, because many of you have already bought a house at least once in your lifetime. And if not, you certainly know somebody very close to you that has. So you know how doable and easy it is to buy a house. It's not something outrageously, ridiculously difficult to do. And so you're thinking, oh, well, okay, I could buy a house and then another house and another house and another house. I was talking to a guy and his wife a couple of months ago at an event that I attended, and he didn't speak English very good. He came from Cuba, and he lives in the greater Miami area. And he said that years ago he went to a Robert Allen seminar, and he did everything in the seminar. He actually followed suit with everything, because he's one of the foreign people. One of the things I love about people that come into this country is that they recognize the opportunity, as many of us who live here all of our lives don't see the opportunity that's right in front of us. So foreigners that come from dirt poor countries will come to the United States, and they easily and quickly see the opportunity that most of us just simply do not see, because we're blind to it. And so he just started buying houses. That's all he did. Started buying houses. Eventually he started buying duplexes, triplexes, and quads. And he told me, he says, everybody who says that there's money in real estate, they're right. There's a lot of money in real estate. And all we did was buy one house after another after another. We rented them all out. And now we're multimillionaires. That's what he said. And I thought about it, and I started thinking about it, and I actually smiled to myself. And I said, this is why most people never make it in real estate investing, because they go to these courses, they sign up for these mentorship groups, they sign up for these trainings, and they go through the trainings and the courses and all that. But then they psych themselves out. Oh, it's too hard, or I don't know if I could do this. But it seems like the people that are, I hate to say it because the guy wasn't all that bright, but the people that are not that bright, or the people that are from different countries, they don't know any better to talk themselves out of the opportunity. Instead, they just go for it head on. They don't see any obstacles. They're just like, okay, this guy said that I could do this Robert Allen guy, so I'm just going to go out and do it. And he did it. I mean, I just thought it was amazing, because I'm just like thinking, yeah, that's how easy it is. You just learn how to do it. Go out there and freaking do it. I mean, it's not that difficult. But those of us who are spoiled, those of us who are smart, those of us who were born in this very prosperous world that we live in right now, in our little environment, our little bubble that we're in here in the United States of America, we are desensitized to the opportunity because it's all around us. Therefore, we no longer see it anymore. And so that's why I just wanted to share that story with you, because it's not difficult. If this guy can come to this country barely speaking English and build a multi-million-dollar, real estate business, all he did was buy up a bunch of houses, and he kept them, and he's rented them all out, and he's a millionaire, barely speaks any English, doesn't know much of anything, kind of not that bright. Anybody can do this. Like literally anyone can do this if you stop psyching yourself out, stop talking yourself out of it, and stop making excuses as to why you can't do it. All right, so what's the bottom line here? The average rental rate for the 18 homes is $1,150 a month. So the gross operating income, which gross operating income is generally done in annual terms, not monthly. So that's just under $250,000 a year. The gross operating expenses, meaning your expense ratio at 25%, is just over $60,000 a year. Your net operating income is just over $185,000 a year. Of course, this doesn't include mortgages, but if you were paying attention, you shouldn't have any mortgages because you cashed all of these out. But technically, this really isn't that accurate. Because are the expenses really 25% a year? Well, that's in case you decide to have a management service in place. If you have a management service in place, it's going to, on average, ding you about $7,000 a year, and that they don't even technically have to do anything to earn that money. A lot of these, preferably, you'll self-manage, which we'll get into a little bit later. This will be more advanced stuff that we talk about more so toward the end of the course here, but later on, I will talk to you about exactly how management works. But if you decide to self-manage, which there's a way that you could do that, then you can actually save a lot of money by doing that. Because you don't really need a management service. Now, for those of you that wonder what replacement reserves are, typically on paper, you will set aside 2.5% of the gross operating income to supposedly use for future expenses, like if you need a new roof, for example, if you need a new asphalt paving on the or driveways, or you need something on the property. You're supposed to bank this for future use, and typically this doesn't necessarily go for residential properties. You don't do this, but it's definitely huge in the commercial business, the commercial real estate world. But you still kind of, because you're building a mini empire, by the time you have 18 houses, you are now in the game. So therefore you should start running these as if you are in the game as a serious commercial real estate investor. And therefore you should account for replacement reserves, because there's no way you're going to have all these houses and all of a sudden never have to have a roof replaced, never have to have a new driveway put in, never have to have a new, a hot water heater put in. I mean, never have to need a new HVAC system. I mean, that's just literally impossible for you to have 18 houses and not need any of that stuff. So your real net operating income for all 18 houses is just under $200,000. And you're well beyond, in many cases, your financial freedom point. I mean, I can guarantee you're probably not covering that now. And you could literally retire from that, because think about it. Your rents are going to double in 15 years. So that's going to put you at about $400,000. Automatically, without you really doing anything except kind of just maintaining and overseeing your properties, but that's it. And as you get older and older and older, you become wealthier and wealthier and wealthier, because not only are your houses appreciating, but you're also increasing your cash flow because the market rents are going up. And so if you do have a mortgage, obviously that's going to chisel in, against your cash flow. But listen, I'm hoping that you don't get the mortgages. So here's your differences in cash flow at the very, very end of the line. You go from $11,705 a year cash flow, which is nothing, versus $174,000 a year if you have your mortgages. Cash flow between having a 7-unit apartment building and 18 single-family homes, which cost the same amount of money. It just takes a lot more work to acquire 18 houses versus one 7-unit apartment building. And this is in the outskirts of Detroit, of all places. That means that there's opportunity everywhere. Now, there's certain cities that you're probably not going to be able to make this work very well. There's certain areas that are like Seattle, they're overpriced, Los Angeles, New York. Certain areas that are really overpriced right now, Phoenix, but then there's areas you could very well do this, like Las Vegas and Atlanta, and even outskirts of Detroit, outskirts of Chicago, St. Louis. There's a lot of opportunity everywhere to flip property and also to do buy and hold assets. So this is 2 simple steps. And the reason I'm having you start backwards with this is because we are doing a bigger picture analysis of where we're ultimately going to go with our real estate business, with our real estate investing empire. We're thinking bigger, and then we're going to go into small thinking in the next set of modules. So this is the bigger picture. We're going to be finding apartment units in your farm area. Your farm area does not have to be local to you. It could be 2,000 to 3,000 miles away. Like, you're going to find more opportunity in Jacksonville, Florida than you're ever going to find in Beverly Hills, California. You're going to find more opportunity in the outskirts of Detroit than you're ever going to find in Seattle, Washington. That's just how it is. So if you live in one of those overpriced areas, where when you go to loopnet.com or costar.com or cityfeed.com or any of those commercial multiple listing services online, and you type in Seattle, Washington, you're going to find that the average cap rate's 3, 4, 5%. That's a no-go. Don't even waste your time there. Same with Los Angeles. You're going to find hundreds of listings for multifamily properties, but every cap rate is going to be 2, 3, 4%. No go. It's not going to work. However, you're going to type in Jacksonville, Florida, and your average cap rate is going to be 8, 9%. That's a go. That's definitely a possibility of a place where you can invest. Obviously, there has to be inventory there. You can't type in a city and state and there's nothing that pops up, because eventually you are going to have to start investing in longer term buy and hold assets. And you're going to want to immediately know of the places you're going to be injecting your buy and hold asset income into to buy these properties. So yes, this is very important for you to figure this out now. You can't wait around. You got to figure this out now before you start making the money, so you have a very streamlined automatic plan in how you're going to be building your real estate empire. All right. So your new investing strategy is this. You're going to be aggressive real estate investing as a bird dog or flipping single family homes for profits. And you're going to be doing passive income real estate investing, buy and hold multifamily. You could do a bunch of single family homes. You can have a bunch of multifamilies. You can have a bunch of apartment buildings, but that's your ultimate passive income real estate investing strategy for long term. So you first have to find an area to flip. Preferably, it's going to be in your own backyard. Now, if you're going to be just a finder, you can find deals anywhere. You can find deals on redfin.com. You can find deals on the MLS. You can find pocket listings. We'll get more into that as we go along through these modules. But you'll ideally start in your own backyard, and if it doesn't work, then you'll just expand outward from there. And maybe you'll even end up in a different state when you're finding properties for investors. If you're flipping properties, unless you're setting up a real estate empire with boots on the ground there, or you know somebody in that area, it's very difficult to do properties where you're buying them, rehabbing them, and flipping them if you're not immediately there, you don't have someone there, or at least you're not there part-time. So please keep that in mind when you're finding your area to ultimately flip if you're going to be rehabbing the properties yourself. And then you also need to find an area to do buy and hold asset activity. This can be close, it could be far away. I invested a lot in Atlanta and a lot in Detroit, Michigan, and we were even doing a lot of partnership deals in Houston and Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas. So I was nowhere near any of those properties. So you don't have to be near the buy and hold area, but it does have to be a single area in the United States. It cannot be all over the board. You can't be having property in Atlanta and property in Detroit and property in Nashville. That's just not going to work. It's going to be very difficult to manage. You should be very fine-tuned and pinpointed. Now, you might not select that area today or this week, and that's fine, but just start keeping it in the back of your mind that that's what you're going to be looking at. Mainly what I want you to focus on now is to find an area, first of all, to decide if you're going to start off as a bird dog or somebody that's going to be getting finder's fees for deals, and then or decide if you want to actually flip property. That's your first major decision that you have to make. And then you're going to start to fine tune the area in which you're going to be investing or looking for property for investors. So I believe that's a really good overview for now. We'll continue on with this. And what I want you to focus in again on is deciding if you want to start off as a finder to get finder's fees for deals, or if you want to be a single family home flipper. This could also include flipping duplexes, triplexes, quads, and even very small apartment buildings to investors for top dollar. So if you also want to do that in the flipping game, you can also do that as well. So those are the choices that you need to make. And then by the time you get into the next session, we'll be getting more into the advanced stuff. Okay, so that's given you enough to do for now. This is Monica Main signing off. I'll see you at the top.